1, 2, and 3. All right, I think we're all here now. Yep, I can't hear you for some reason, buddy.
Because I had my mic muted. There we go. Nice job. Great professionalism at its finest here. Only this show, right?
That was the casual part.
Once again, episode 227 of This Uncanny Earth. Thank you for joining us. As always, I am your host, Robert Solomon. And with me, of course, is the grumpiest man alive. This way, but really he says it's this way. I don't know. We got the kiss crossed. Spider, ladies and gentlemen. But today, we've got a guest with us. This is our very first guest on StreamYard, I think. We have not had a guest on StreamYard yet. So
we had Poster Smash. We had Poster Smash.
Was that through StreamYard?
Yep.
Oh, that's right. That was through StreamYard.
Yep.
It's a long time ago. I'm getting old.
But number 2 isn't bad.
What'd you say? No, listen.
Number 2 isn't bad.
It's always good being a guest on the show because it's going to be fun and you're going to have fun. You're not allowed to not have fun. It's illegal to not have fun on the show. There's rules and regulations or something. I don't know. I'm not the HOA. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Our guest tonight is a paranormal investigator with SRI Paranormal. Ladies and gentlemen, Theresa Racer. Hello, Theresa. How are you doing today?
I'm good.
Yeah, let's give her the applause. Good. Thank you for being on the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Like you said, I'm a paranormal investigator with Spectral Research and Investigations based out of Huntington, West Virginia. We've been together for almost 3 years now. Little under 3 years. But I've been investigating the paranormal for probably, I don't want to date myself, but at least 20 years in some kind of official capacity as, in a group. I started way back when West Virginia really didn't have a whole lot of groups. There was, I think when I started right after high school in 2001, there were 2 groups. And neither one of them were in my area, so I just kind of got started, with some friends, mostly just legend tripping and doing our own research, and it kind of, grew from there, and I found an established group to hook up with, and just ever since then, I've been involved in paranormal investigation, checking out the ghosts, checking out the hauntings. Along the way, I started my website, Teresa's Haunted History of the Tri-State.
Excellent. 20 years. So you were doing this back before the Zach Bagginses of the world were taking the world. And it's crazy because I remember 2001, not to date myself, but I graduated high school in 1998. So about 4 years difference. Yeah, about 4 years difference. And that wasn't a big of a thing. Nobody was really out there like, let's go look for ghosts. I mean, people did it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But nobody talked about it. Nobody was like, you know what I'm doing this weekend? No, what are you doing, Jim? I'm gonna go out and look for ghosts because people thought you were crazy for so long. There was like a stigma about believing in ghosts, and if you believed in the occult or you like practiced occult things and did witchcraft, you were this crazy lunatic person. But nowadays it's getting more accepted, and I think that's a good thing.
Exactly. Like back when my friends and I were doing it and stuff, it was one thing to go out to the spooky places and, try to scare yourself, but to actually research and study it, you were a weirdo.
Because, everybody's going to the cemetery at like midnight or like 1 a.m, like, oh no, the ghosts are going to come and get us. And everybody's been scared, but to literally go out and get into the lore and the history of the places that you're at was a rarity. Nobody really did that. I think we kind of did that at Rogues Hollow. There's a Rogues Hollow by me that has a crybaby bridge. I think every single place has a crybaby bridge. I don't think
Ohio has like the greatest per capita of crybaby bridges anywhere.
Every bridge is a crybaby bridge. Every single one. But there's a place called Rogues Hollow that's in Doylestown. It's probably about 15 minutes from me. And that part's cool, but the coolest part is it used to be a coal mining town. And if you know a lot about coal mining towns, which living in West Virginia, I'm sure you do, they were very rowdy. They were rowdy places. You would go to these coal mining towns and they had their own money called script, and you had to buy from their shop using their money. And if you bought script from other places, you would get beat up. You would get kicked out. And that happened in Rogues Hollow. They would bring script from other places, and they'd be like, "Oh, this isn't ours." They get beat up, get thrown out. It was rowdy. There was prostitution. There was gambling. It was serious business. The town was pretty big, and then they tore it down. The only thing that remains now is an old mill with logging and things like that. So very interesting, very fascinating. I thought he was going to say that.
No, I had to cough. I had to cough.
That's important. Thank you. So where was the first place you investigated?
I don't know. I know some of the earliest places that I investigated. Back then, Lakin Industrial School, right outside of Point Pleasant, was a major hotspot for kids to go. It was called Lakin Industrial School for Colored Boys. It was an old school. It had its own farm and huge building, main building. And then a couple of there was a barn out there. There was a couple of farm buildings, some other buildings on the property. And it was kind of like this unspoken rule, as long as you weren't doing anything too bad, the cops kind of looked the other way. Unfortunately, it was torn down. Gosh, it's probably been 10 years now since it's been torn down. But a lot of people in my area kind of got their start, going to this, property and trying to see what they could find there. And there were stories about, people being pushed down the stairs and seeing shadow people. And I never had a whole lot of experiences there. I guess the biggest experience that I ever had there was this was years after, I was in high school doing this. This was 2007. It was right before they were getting ready to tear it down. Actually, they might have already had torn it down. It was right around when they were tearing it down. And my investigation group I was with at the time, we decided to visit the property. And there was probably a group of about 6 or 7 of us, and we were just walking around the property. And I kind of noticed out of the corner of my eye that I was like, I think it looks like there's more people with our group that, than what we came with originally. And so I kind of stopped and looked, and I saw this man in a brown suit that was just kind of standing off to the side, and he just kind of disappeared around the corner. And I was like, did anybody else see that? And of course, nobody else saw it.
Nobody ever does.
Nobody ever does.
Nobody ever does. So from there, let me ask this first, because I asked this to all the guests. What got you interested in all this? What was the thing that got you this is it, this is my thing?
Yeah, there's not really any one clear, incident. I know a lot of people are like, yeah, I had this thing happen to me, and that's what, got me into this field. It seems like it was just kind of something that I was born into. I tell the story often. I grew up in West Virginia. My family has been in this area for years and years, generations and generations. So we're, that good Appalachian mix of Scots Irish with, the Cherokee thrown in. Yep. And my grandparents, they were from Beckley. They lived in the Beckley area. And I spent my summers with them a lot growing up. And, instead of telling me ghost story, or instead of telling me bedtime stories and stuff, they would tell me ghost stories about, growing up in the hills of, West Virginia, and, just ghost stories that they had heard growing up. And my grandpa always would tell me about this house that was almost right across the street from where they were living, and about, this man who had murdered his wife there. And, so we would stay up late at night and sit out on the porch and see if we could see lights and stuff moving in this house. And he'd always be like, yeah, as soon as you get old enough, we're going to go over there, and we're going to go ghost hunting at this, house. And so he had all these books by Hans Holzer and, just other authors that were popular in the 60s and 70s and stuff. Right. And so I started reading those. And so I was interested in it. But things kind of started coming together when I was about 10, and we had moved into this new house. And we knew like right away there was something not right about this house. um, so I didn't know right away the whole story of the house, and then my mom told me later. But we had purchased it from my now ex-stepfather's mother, and she and her husband had built the house and they had lived there. And this ex-stepfather's father had actually passed away in the backyard from a heart attack. Mm. And I didn't know any of this going in. I just, I knew that he had passed away and that we had bought the house from his mother and moved in there. But I started seeing this guy standing in our hallway, and he wasn't just standing there. He would always be like walking down the hallway, and he would always be walking like the same direction. It was never, back and forth. It was always same spot in the hallway, walking in the same direction. And, all kinds of other stuff was happening. And I mean, it was scary because this is the first time that I ever really consciously remembered anything happening. And it was, terrifying at night. I was terrified to even get out of bed to go to the bathroom because I knew that I was going to see the ghost. And so that's when I really started like researching, paranormal phenomena. Because everybody was trying to tell me, like, oh no, the house isn't haunted. It's, it's this electrical issue or it's this. And I knew that not everything that I was experiencing was paranormal. Like, I knew that there was probably some natural explanations for some of it. Right. But these, like, blanket statements, they just didn't seem to, make sense in every case. So I really wanted to, like, study, okay, what could be paranormal? What definitely isn't? What applies to my situation and what doesn't. And so after, living in that situation for years, I got to the point where I was like, this is something I'm really interested in. This is something I've studied a lot. Maybe I can, help other people who are going through what I've gone through.
So seeing that, right, that probably kind of put some things in perspective. Mm-hmm. Because, with myself, I never have really seen anything. Mm-hmm. I've never seen a shadow person. I've seen orbs. I've seen a black mass float by. But growing up, I never saw anything. A lot of times people say, I saw this, that. My interest stemmed from, like I said, Time Life book that I have here. Well, they had an old Western series. Mm-hmm. And I think it was Outlaws or whatever. And they showed the dead bodies. Because in the old West, the dead bodies did two things. One, it showed the village, okay, we're safe. This outlaw is dead. You don't have to worry about them robbing you or, killing you. And two, it would keep away would-be offenders. Like, this is what will happen to you if you do not behave yourself. So, and that kind of grew into that. And then I started getting into UFOs, which was like one of my favorite things. And then I got into ghosts, and I've been on a couple of investigations. But I feel like it got kind of oversaturated a bit. Like, everybody was doing it, and we would go to someplace, and there'd be a bunch of people, and I'm like, nothing's going to happen because there's too many people. There's too much human energy, I guess would be the best way to put it, and not enough of the residual energy can come through because everything else is going on. People's energy can be measured electricity style, and it's like, that's too much going on. Nothing's going to show itself. But I have been in places where that has happened. But I've always wanted to see something. I've always wanted to see. I've seen UFOs. I saw a Black Panther once. Things that can kind of be explained a little bit. Like UFOs, you say, well, maybe it's a government ship that that they just haven't shown the public yet. They're just testing it. And what better place than Ohio to fly it over, like, oh, it's just Ohio, it's Ohio. And then the Panther I saw driving home, I was taking my son home, leaving the YMCA, and we were coming back, and something ran across the road, and it was nighttime. And if you've ever seen a canine, canines move differently than felines do. This was a feline, and it was a big feline. It wasn't like just a cat. I know what a cat looks like. And I just said to myself, what is that? It would happen so quick that it darted across the road, and I haven't seen it since. And like I said, maybe mountain lion, but it was crazy. We have a question. Ingrained cyclist, good evening, sir. Says any Mothman investigations in your career?
Not formally. I know that people are still claiming to see Mothman, to this day, even in the Point Pleasant area. I'm kind of the camp, though, that, the majority of those sightings, were over and done with in 1967. Interestingly, though, a couple years ago, my son thinks that he saw something that was a Mothman about probably a half hour away from Point Pleasant. It was in Eleanor, West Virginia, if anybody knows where that is. It's right across the river from Winfield, so about 35 minutes away from Point Pleasant. And he was with his grandparents, and they were actually on their way to Point Pleasant in Gallipolis to go see the Christmas lights. And they had stopped at Dairy Queen to get dinner first. And as they were waiting in the drive-through line, he looked up at the vocational school, which was right beside the drive-through, and he said he saw a man with wings standing on top of the school. And this kid couldn't tell a lie to save his life. I mean, he is super, super serious about things. And the weird thing is, like, after he told me that, he wouldn't tell me anything else about it. He just shut down. He didn't want to talk about it. But we have investigated the TNT area where Mothman was first seen. There's been a lot of weird stuff happen at the TNT area, not just Mothman related. People have seen UFOs out there. People have seen other cryptids out there. People believe it's haunted. So we have investigated the TNT area where the igloos are. I haven't really caught a whole lot of good evidence, in my opinion, but it's so hard to catch anything out there because it's such a it's not a controlled environment. You're literally out there in the elements. And
Right.
you can hear other people talking, you can hear hunting dogs, you've got all the crickets and the bullfrogs, and I mean it's crazy out there. So but we've had some weird stuff happen out there. Man, we had something that jumped across our path, and I swear to God, it sounded like it was about a 500-pound monster or something, just like jump into the water in front of us.
So seeing stuff like that and being able to, you have a 20-year career of doing this. What is I don't want to say wildest. What was the one thing that you have seen that kind of confirms that, okay, this may be more than just mind over matter, for instance? Like, a lot of times if you're in the dark, your mind will play tricks on you because it's overcompensating for the lack of the senses that it is normally used to. They say if you sit in a pitch black room where you can't see your hand in front of your face, your brain will start making up images just to sort of pass the time, even. So for you, what was that one thing where you said, okay, this stuff is a lot realer than I thought it was?
Yeah, I don't know if there really is a one defining, thing. I've definitely had some experiences that are like, oh my gosh, I've never seen that before in, all the years I've been doing this. But, and one of the reasons I'm in this field is because I'll be the first to tell you, I don't know everything about, this strange field of the paranormal. And I don't know if we'll ever have all the answers. But I know that there's something out there that people are experiencing that's worth looking into because people are having so many similar experiences. Um, you know, that there's something going on. I don't know what it is. Is it spirits of the dead? Is it some sort of rubbing up against a different multiverse universe? I mean, there's something going on. Probably, a good example of just one of the places, just recently in the past couple of years that we've investigated that's really blown my mind is the Deep End Antiques in Beckley, West Virginia. This location, I have seen and experienced stuff there that I didn't think was. They don't teach you, in those ghost hunting 101 classes.
Right.
I mean, this place. I mean, it's an antique store now. It's owned by this awesome proprietor named Travis, and so he has his antique store, and the building itself is built atop the old pool that was part of the old Honey in the Rock motel. And so they still have a large portion of the motel itself out back. And those buildings are used as like storage facilities for like the antique store and some of the other businesses that are right there on like where the pool is and stuff. And it never really, like, the motel itself never really took off the way they thought it was going to. Like Honey in the Rock was this play that like they still do every summer. It's about the Hatfields and McCoys, and it's a real popular play. And they thought that it was going to bring in all this tourism, and it did like during the summer. But during the rest of the year, not a whole lot of people ever stayed at the motel. So they kind of, tried to open up a bar and a restaurant to try to get, people in throughout the rest of the year. And it just kind of, even starting in the like late 60s to early 70s, just brought in a lot of bad elements to this motel. There was a lot of crime, a lot of prostitution, drug use. There was a cop that was murdered on the site. Yeah, he was involved in a traffic stop, like right there. And the location itself is really weird. It's at this crossroads in, these like major roads, but then it's like a crossroads at these major like waterways as well. And then you've got up on the hill is this old country club where there's rumors that there was satanic activity um, there was Civil War activity in this area. There was like coal miner activity. Just all kinds of like crazy stuff happening like right in this area. So there's something weird about the land there. And so the first time we investigated here, we went into this investigation with not like a whole lot of information about the hauntings. Like we knew some of them. So we're like, okay, are we dealing with, is it haunted because of the antiques there? The owner likes to collect a lot of antiques that are crime scene relics and war relics, and so a lot of things that have a violent past, a violent history.
Right.
So we've got that, but then we've also got the location itself. So it's like, okay, is it the location, is it the items inside? And then we just we discovered that it was that and so much more. We that was probably the first time that I've experienced what I would consider some sort of elemental haunting. This whole location is just sort of like a liminal space. It's like trapped in time. It feels like it shouldn't be there, but is. Like the old hotel rooms, they look still like old hotel rooms, but they're not. And it's just, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it, but investigating there, we had people who were touched. We had people who saw things that weren't quite human. We had interactions with our spirit box, with something that was saying things that seemed to be kind of like of a sacrilegious nature. So whatever it was, it seemed like it was a concentration of like just all of the yucky, bad, negative feelings of this spot from all of the violence and all the, horribleness just kind of congealed into like something actually sentient. So yeah, we're standing like right where a prostitute was murdered, like very violently. And I mean, it was a wild experience.
So, what I think a lot of times with places like that, so first of all, you have water, which is a conductor of that sort of thing, right? And then you have a crossroads, which is a symbol of a whole nother thing. So you have those two going for you now, right? Next, you have an old motel where shady activity happened, people got murdered, people probably overdosed, things like that probably happened. So there's that residual that sits. Then you bring in another element. You're bringing the element of like, say you like, for instance, there's a hammer that somebody used to murder his wife or murder her husband, and that's there for sale. And then you bring in all these other things, and it's like all this energy is vying for control, and it's just like a combustible thing where it's like, here you are in the middle of all of this stuff, right? And to me, I think a lot of this is the residual energy of death that just kind of lingers. I don't really think it's spirits of people. I think it's more there's all this stuff you use to kill somebody. And murder is a crazy thing. Like when you really sit down and think about it, you're removing someone from this earth. You're literally taking the energy out of them and transferring it somewhere else. And your energy still sits. Now, that energy, some of it's going to transfer into you probably. Because it takes a person's mind. It almost has to snap in order to kill somebody. Even at war, even if you're war, you still have to make that conscious decision to, I got to take this person out, even though I know they're going to take me out, type of thing. And so thinking about that kind of stuff, it's just having that location and everybody's there. And you said dead bodies and all that, so you have to wonder, is that it? Now, what was the main experience that you remember from that location?
There were two, and one has nothing to do with this. This was a completely different thing. Okay, so the first one, it kind of like leads into another experience.
Talk about them all.
This is like over a period of like different investigations. This is just a whole weird craziness. So we were in the back in the storage area / old motel room where the one prostitute was just brutally murdered. And there was the two of us that were back there at the one time. And then one of our other investigators joined us. Anyway, so the owner told us, if you're not getting anything back there, lock the door. So we're like, okay. So we pulled the chain lock across it, and it was literally, you could like feel the atmosphere change, like as soon as we locked it with the chain lock. And I don't consider myself psychic, but if I kind of let myself relax a little bit and kind of open up, I can get feelings and sometimes kind of like pictures in my mind. And I'm trying to kind of train myself to just not be afraid to just let that come through. And even if it sounds crazy, even if it has, nothing to do with anything, just go ahead for documentation purposes and, say what I'm feeling, say what I'm seeing. And my ghost partner and I, the guy who started our group, Brian, he's kind of the same way. And when we get together, we can kind of like really, feed off of each other and really get kind of a clear picture. And so we were back there and we were both getting the same image of this girl with long blonde hair and wearing like kind of 70s, 80s style jeans, trying to get our attention and trying to tell us, what had happened. And she was terrified. She was absolutely terrified to be in that room. And, we got the impression that she wasn't from that area, but she was trying to leave a bad situation and fell into this lifestyle. But then it was really weird because later that evening, we started getting this darker presence kind of overtaking things, and that's when we started like hearing footsteps on the wall and footsteps on the ceiling, and we started seeing this like snake-like shadow on the wall. And that's when our laser grid light, which the battery shouldn't go dead because it was plugged in. And a laser grid, like when the battery, even like when it's on battery power, when it starts to die, it just kind of like, bloops out, like fades out.
Right.
It started blinking for some reason. And it started blinking. So we're like, okay, well, let's try to see if it'll blink in response to our questions. And that's when it started like kind of answering our questions, and it started kind of in conjunction with our spirit box, started saying things that were kind of a sacrilegious nature, kind of saying that it was older than God, more powerful than God, um, beyond what we know as God. And so we're like, well, this is getting really weird.
Right.
And we kind of got the, feeling that what we had experienced earlier with this girl wasn't necessarily true. Whatever this was using that as a way to get our sympathy and, try to, like mimic her. So I think it was actually a different investigation. I don't think it was that same investigation, but a couple of us were in that same room with the owner, and we were just standing around in there, and we noticed that Brian, our founder, was up against the wall, and there was a shadow behind him that was not his shadow, and it was bigger than his shadow. It was moving independently of his shadow. And so we were trying all this stuff to try to recreate it and everything. And the founder took a couple of pictures, and these pictures are so weird. I mean, normally I'd be like, oh yeah, that's pareidolia and stuff.
Right.
But he's shown so many people these pictures, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, I don't really have an explanation for that. The pictures are kind of like out the back window. And right before this, we had been looking out the back window, and the back window is up the hill towards where that old club is that I was talking about, where the satanic activity happened. And there was a murder at the country club too. So just throwing that out there. And we thought that there was a deer up there, but we were watching this deer, and this deer wasn't moving. And we watched it for a long time, and it wasn't moving. And we're like, why is that deer not moving? And so we sent a couple of the guys out there, like up on the hill, to see, is this really a deer, or is it, maybe a homeless person or something standing up there watching us? What is this thing? And so I'm joking around, of course, and I'm like, hey, that better not be some kind of Wendigo skinwalker thing up there watching
deer
us.
man.
Yeah. And so they come back and they're like, yeah, nothing's there. And that's when he takes the pictures. And one of the pictures I swear it is so weird, and he probably has them online somewhere. It looks like the cover of a heavy metal like album. It looks like the Pope, but wearing like the Pope hat, but like with an upside down cross on it. And then it kind of like the next picture, taken like 3 seconds later, kind of merges into like this other like creature thing. And I don't know.
You'll have to send those to us so we can evaluate them.
I'll see if I can get them for him and send them to you.
Because now I want to see this metal album that you're talking about.
Yeah, I was like, that's crazy. That cannot be what I'm seeing.
So I have to wonder whenever people run into entities because a lot of times entities like that say things like I am before God aren't really popular here in the States because our country isn't that old. That's not saying that the Native Americans and then the giants that they took out before them didn't have their beliefs and their set systems. But I find a lot of what you're talking about happen in the Middle East. There's a lot of records of like jinn and a lot of div and things like that that say similar things, that we have been here long before the creator was here. And you're like, and I can see that there. So I have to wonder in this case, either A, it was trying to scare you guys, which is highly possible, or B, it's something that was here before the Europeans came over and it had been resting in this land for a very, very long time. And who knows, maybe there was a corruption of some form, maybe because we've all read folklore of a being that is nice and it's sweet, and then invaders come, and then it slowly turns into like this monster that is more of a reflection of mankind at that point. And so I have to wonder, and if you guys ever go back, let me know. We should go there sometime, Spider. Me and you should go up there and check that place out. I'd like to see that place.
Definitely.
Yeah, he's real open to investigators. So yeah, any weekend you want to come down there, he's real open. And
yeah, we
next time we're down there, if you want to join us, you're welcome to.
Yes, because I'm a novice. I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, we've done it.
Most of what we do is we're less like the investigator, where we go out with all the equipment and stuff, and where we go out to see what the place feels like and see what it's like, because we're really more on the intuitive level, more kind of like we're going to go at it from the skeptic's viewpoint rather than bring this van full of stuff and do the Zach Baggins, like, if there's a demon here, push me down the stairs. And we don't do that kind of stuff.
On the stairs. Everybody wants to see him get pushed on the stairs. Come on now.
We just want to, we want to see how the atmosphere is and see what it's like. And we've had some pretty interesting stuff in the places we've gone to. We've never really done. I think the elk was the closest we went to an official investigation, because we had less there with the spirit box and things. But we don't usually go into those places. But we have had some really interesting, like what was that place we went to? It was like the Black Plague subdivision.
Oh yeah, in Massillon, which is roughly like a half hour from me, if you go down 21, there's a place called the Black Plague subdivision. Well, when the Black Plague happened and a lot of people got sick, they buried them in this subdivision. People lived there. They just buried them there because people were dying. That place felt very, I want to say
solemn.
Yeah,
very solemn, yeah. Very somber.
Like it wasn't much of like a threat type of thing. But it was a very somber place. Like, you could tell that people had died there. Like, you could feel it. Like, it's a feeling. I can't explain the feelings that we get. Like, I can't explain mine. I can tell you how I'm feeling, but I don't know where it comes from. It's just like I don't know if it's an empathy trait, or if it's a trait along, like a clairvoyant type thing. I couldn't tell you. But it's interesting because I've been to the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, and I remember going to this room. And I immediately, the place is already like pretty serious business when it comes to the things that happen. We're talking about an asylum, where you could put, if you were married to a woman and she talked back to you, could put her in there. You could put your kids in there if they acted up. And like the criminals would make themselves be kind of crazy so they wouldn't get put into the criminal wing in there with other people. But I remember going to this room and I'm like, something's not right. I mean, the whole place doesn't feel right. But this room in particular, something in my gut was like, something happened here. Coming to find out, the lady that took us on the tour, or the guy that took us on the tour, said that the inmates had taken the guy, put the bedpost on his temple, and were jumping up and down the bed and basically just squished his brains everywhere. And I felt that. I knew something bad had happened, and I knew she was going to say something along those lines. So I get those kind of feelings from places. And like you said, I take pictures, I'll voice record, but I don't, because I don't know how to work half of that equipment. I don't know how to work spirit boxes, all that. I'm not saying I wouldn't learn. I'm not saying that people who do bring that stuff or any, aren't real. I don't do the whole, like, you're not a real this if you don't do this type of person. But I like to just be there and take it all in. It's more of a historical thing for me, because that's where I go into any location, even if it's not haunted. But if it's historical, I love doing that. I love going into a place, because the first thing I feel when I walk into a place is I feel the history of it. Like, you could tell it's old. The Haymond is one of those places where you walk in and immediately you're like, you feel like you're back in time. You feel like you have stepped through a portal and you're in the same era where that house was at its most beautiful. And that place is a beautiful place. That's a really beautiful place. I'm actually going there a week from Sunday to interview Theresa up there, and I'm very excited. I love that place the first time I went. So
we'll be there April 7th and 8th for a public investigation. So if anybody wants to check it out, we'll be there the 7th and 8th.
That's awesome. That place is really cool. The upstairs part is my favorite. Like his whole like office area is probably one of the most legit. That window is nuts.
Those small little like nook rooms that they got up there. Yeah, they give off some weird energy up there.
Yeah, that
like
place.
It definitely, there was something going on there. Whether you believe it or not, there was something that gets to you up there.
And
I've seen Emma a couple of times.
Who's Emma?
Emma is Mr. Heyman's first wife.
Oh, is it one of those like those shady things that happened to her, like the Greenbrier ghost story?
Okay, so kinda, because she passed away in the house, or we don't know if she passed away in the house. She passed away while living in the house, and her death certificate is not available on the West Virginia State Archives website. And Theresa said that she went to the courthouse and they couldn't find it there. So the only death record that I could find for her was one newspaper article that just said that she had passed away, and that, the date and everything. And I think she passed away in the house, but her funeral, and wake and everything was held in the house. And every time that we're there and we talk to somebody that we think is Emma, something keeps coming across on our spirit boxes and keeps emphasizing that something happened on the stairs. Somebody fell down the stairs or was pushed down the stairs. Something happened on that staircase. And that's where I've seen her a couple of times. I've seen her in the second floor hallway too. The first time I saw her, I was sitting on that couch that's in the second floor hallway, and I had my back, facing the stairs, and they see her walking from the pink room to the blue bedroom. Yep. And I caught a white kind of skirt out of the corner of my eye and kind of turned and caught just like the end of a skirt going into the bedroom. So that was the first time I saw her. And I've heard her a couple of times too. The first time that I was getting ready to go upstairs on an investigation to Mr. Heyman's office, she warned me not to go up there. Like, Brian went up, it was just me and Brian on this investigation, and he went up there first. And I was like, okay, I'll be there in a few minutes. And I started going up the stairs, and clear as day, I heard a woman's voice say, "You don't want to go up there." And I'm like, oh, thank you for the warning, but, I need to go up there.
Right.
Yeah.
Did anything happen? Did anything happen when you went up there?
Not that time. Nothing's happened to me. I know people have heard screams. I know women have been touched up in his office a couple of times. The last time that we were there, though, something happened to Brian that was really weird. And if you check out the SRI Huntington WV YouTube page, we have the video of it up there. I'm doing a spirit box. The Estes method session. So I've got, the blindfold on, I've got the headphones on. I don't know anything what's going on around me. And we're sitting in his office. And, I'm saying what I'm hearing on the box, but I'm also kind of telling him what I'm seeing in my mind's eye too. And I don't think it's Emma. And I don't think that it was necessarily his second wife either. We think maybe it had something to do with either one of the Heyman's daughters or somebody to do with when it was Morris's baby hospital. Because I kept seeing this woman wearing red and she had dark hair. Or, it could have been, there's some rumors about Mr. Heyman and some of the hired help. So it might have even been her. But she was so mad. And I kept seeing her in like this bathroom, just like angrily, like combing her hair. And she was really, really upset about something. And so I was talking about something, and I was talking about a green chair with metal like brads or divots, and that chair is in a room that's in the third floor. And so Brian decided with one of the other guys that they were going to go in that room and check it out to see what I was talking about. And as they get to the door of it, of course, I'm still in the other room. I'm still completely under the Estes method. I don't know what's going on. As soon as they get to the doorway, I said, make sure to knock first before you go in. because that's what I heard come over the box.
Right.
So he's like, that was really weird. So they go in, and he says that he's looking at that chair, and the chair is like old and broken down, so nobody can actually sit in it. And he says that he looks, and it looks like you can see the outline of somebody sitting in a chair, but just very, very faintly. And people have seen an older woman sitting in that chair before. That's one of the stories. And as he was like trying to get a picture like on video of this chair, he felt like he got electrocuted, like something like it just zapped him. And he like was still feeling this, and they took the EMF and the voltmeters, and he wasn't giving off EMF, but his body was giving off voltage, like off the chart on our voltmeter. And until he said that he didn't feel it anymore, and you could see it go down like on our device. So that was a really weird experience.
That sounds really interesting though, regardless. Yeah. Like, thanks for being our experimental test guy. Appreciate you, buddy. Hope that shocking. It was a shocking experience. I've never had anything like crazy like that. The craziest thing I've ever seen, like I said, I was at the Elk, and I remember looking over it. There's the pool table's on the 3rd floor. So there's a pool table on the 3rd floor next to a pillar. I remember looking over and I saw this black mass. It was about as big as a basketball. Wow. And if you've ever been in a room where there's enough light, but it's still dark outside, you can see things very faintly. You can be able to see the wall, but it's very faint. This orb or this mass, I couldn't see through it. And I watched it move. I literally watched it move from the pillar to the pool table. And it was just, I couldn't see through it. That's how I knew it was something different, because normally I'd be like, okay, maybe it's a shadow of something, or maybe somebody's moving a little bit, because it was cold. It was in October. It was October. It was an October day, and like moving, and maybe that was it. But the way it moved was even just, it was a weird, like, it was just like this. It was like very ethereal, might be the correct terminology here, but it was very strange to me. And I remember just watching it. Then I remember Les was using, I don't know if this is considered a spirit box, but it runs a bunch of radio signals like on repeat, and then it like goes through all like the AM, I think the FM frequency meter. And we heard old time music, like some piano. It was like a weird, like, and in my head, I'm like, okay, is there a classical music station close? You know, maybe that's it. Maybe there's a classical music station. They play classical music at night. It's not too far-fetched. We got one that plays jazz at night. So I'm like, okay. But the way I was feeling as I was hearing this music, it felt like we had reached back into the past, and we were pulling from a bygone era of time. And I remember just feeling like this weird, like chills up your back type of feeling. And I remember Les, just because Les has no fear. Les has no fear. This is the same dude that fell asleep in the Hammond, woke up because he thought somebody was calling his name, and then went back to sleep.
Yeah.
Just straight was like, tired. It's been a long day, ghosts. Let me sleep. And I'm like, all right. He just fell asleep. You know, he'll go out camping in the wilderness by himself. Like, all right. But, you know, I respect that, because that takes guts. Couldn't catch me doing nothing like that, but, you know. But he said, how many people are in the room? And across the FM spectrum, it said 5. And I'm like, excuse me, once again, maybe mathematically it just hit a station that was said 5, just pure luck. But then once again, I started getting this feeling, and then Les said something. I forget what he said exactly, but he had the dowsing rods, and I forget, he asked a question or he said something, and the dowsing rods pointed to, they crossed right at me, and I was like, maybe I need to go somewhere where it's light and if there's people. I'm a little terrified, but it was cool. It was like, because I never felt that. This was the first time where I couldn't rationally explain it away. You know, like if you hear a slamming door or something, if the door sits, you know, diagonally, or, you know, it sits crooked, yeah, okay, the wind's gonna take it. We have that here in my house. The bathroom door, if you don't put something in front of it, when it's windy outside in the summertime, the door would slam. You know, that's just how the doors are. But seeing that mass and then the FM box or the box itself saying that was like, this is, it was because the first time something like that happens, because I never really had anything like that happen to me. It's all been like feelings, nothing of an experience. It's kind of terrifying because you're like, this whole time you're like, okay, I didn't realize that this was going to be a thing. I didn't think I'd get this far. I just, I thought it was just going to be, because I'm more skeptical about things, but not in a way that's disrespectful, just in a way that like, let's get rid of all of what it could be first and then work on what it might be after the fact. But that was crazy. And then I just like, that feeling of wanting to experience that again has never left. Like, I want to experience that again. Like, I want to see something, because like I said, I've seen UFOs, I've seen, a panther, but I want to see, like you said, I want to see the skirt or the dress walk by. Like, I want to see something that in my brain, I'm like, there is no rational explanation for what I just saw. That's what I want to see. I've been chasing that for a long time. And we've been to all kinds of places. I think too, it's weird to me because like being in a place during the day is a lot different than being in a place at nighttime, which is crazy to me, because if you're in the same place, why wouldn't you give off that same residual energy? Right. Because, all of those murders that happen to these women, or, when children get, when they become victims of unfortunate things, this not always at nighttime. It's not like people are like, wait, we got to wait till the nighttime, guys. Don't do any murdering. Keep all the murdering at night. We're going to just hang out during the day. So why do you think that a lot of the things happen at night as opposed to during the day? Unless maybe that's a misconception that I don't understand. Because have you had things happen during the day?
Yeah, I think that more things probably in my experiences, I've had more things happen during the day than they have at night. And yeah, I think that it really depends on the location, whether things happen more during the day or during the night. But I think we kind of do get that misconception a lot that things happen more at night because we're paying more attention to it at night. Like during the day, we're busy doing stuff. We're at work, or watching TV, or doing chores or whatever. Just running around doing stuff. But then at night, we might be kind of laying in bed or relaxing, and things are more quiet. The lights are down, and so we're our senses are a little bit sharpened, and so I think we notice things more at night. And I think that's kind of similar to what happened these past couple of years with COVID. People were spending more time at home, and they were spending more time not doing their daily grind, and so we saw a huge influx of paranormal activity these past couple of years because I think people were just home more and started noticing, what was going on around them.
I think too, like you said, we get in our head of like, I do this during the day. And so we do it as a routine so much that it's like our bodies stick in that mode, even when we're not doing it. But because we're so used to doing it, our bodies are like, we're not really, our senses aren't as sharpened. But like at night, like you said, you're just laying in bed, or you're up, and it's like right now, like this is perfect time. Like once I get off here, I'll probably stay up for another couple hours. And my senses are like, I can hear everything in the house. The creaking, if my son gets up, I can hear him walking on the floor. So it's like, I'm used to that. But if I'm like in the zone down here during the day, I'm usually reading or researching or studying or doing something of that nature, I can't really hear him. I'll know if he comes down the steps, or I'll know if he's running, but for the most part, I don't hear much. But at night, for some weird reason, like you said, I think it's because during the day we get into this groove, we get into this grind, we get into, okay, I got to eat at this time, I take a shower at this time, I do my chores during this time, so I'm not thinking about it, But then night comes, you're like, I'm not really thinking about anything. There's nothing going on upstairs. So we got about 5 minutes left. What would you what advice would you give to people looking to get into this as a whole?
First, there's room at the table for everyone in this field, I think. I know there's a lot of like, oh well, if you don't do this, then you suck. You're not a good investigator. we all don't necessarily have to be in it for the same reasons. You know, some people are in it to find their own personal answers, and that's great. Some people, like me, are really into the historical side and, documenting for folklore and historical purposes. Some people are really, really into the tech side. And I think we kind of need, like all of those aspects to really kind of come together. As long as you're not doing anything that's like super unethical or illegal or really making us look bad in this field. It's okay if you just kind of do this every once in a while, on weekends, or, if you want to go out and spend, hundreds and thousands of dollars, with the most, latest and greatest equipment and stuff. But don't do that until you really, really know, that you want to do this and why you want to do it. I would suggest, reading everything you can get your hands on. Don't just watch a couple of episodes of Zach and decide that
this is what I'm going to do.
This is what to do.
Can't wait.
You could use that as a learning tool. That's usually better as, an example of what not to do.
Right. I mean, that's kind of what got me into it, though, was watching that show. I was like, man, I would like to do that. And not because of like what they did, just because they got to go to these cool historical places.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
And get, they're getting paid to see these amazing places that haven't been haven't been functioning in maybe 50 to 100 years, maybe even more. So getting to be there in that location, that's the best part. That is the best part.
If I never see a ghost or, get a weird EVP or anything, as long as I get to experience like, just the history of these locations and get to see, we've gotten a chance to see, like places and places within places that, people don't get to go and see. And, we get to, and I don't know, I'm a dork. Like one of the, most fun, greatest things to me is just, sitting in the library for hours looking at the old microfiche.
Right. Like that's what I do online. Like I look up, especially after I got Ancestry, I was like, let me just go into and like I'd be there hours just like, what did this person that kind of stuff. I love just going to the library and finding books and just going through books, taking my own books, just sitting there and I like to do a lot of cross-referencing. So like if I find a topic that I really get into, and I get into topics super quick. So like for instance, like I'm big I'm very interested in the Middle East as a whole. Like that's my forte, like jinn and div and all kinds of spirits of that nature. Over there fascinates me to no end. Like that's my thing. So like that's definitely on the plan one day is to go, to Saudi Arabia, to Iran, to Iraq, to Yemen, all these places that it's just there's so much history there. I mean, there's history here too, but you're never going to find history like that anywhere else. Anywhere else in the world, you will never find history like that. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. But I just love being in these places. Like when people are like, yeah, you can come, come by. I don't care what time of the day it is. It's like, listen, we can only do it during the day. Awesome. We went to the Sister Century House. Fantastic place to get breakfast, by the way. This place is still in operation. But down in the basement, there used to be a tunnel, and I've seen the tunnel itself that would go across the street to the tattoo parlor. It ran diagonally to it. Well, the Sister Century House used to be an old morgue where they would burn bodies. They had a furnace and everything. And
the tattoo parlor used to be the
tattoo parlor
bar.
Was a saloon.
Used to be a tavern.
Yeah. And if you killed somebody, you could pay the bartender, and then you could pay the I don't know what they call the person who cremates bodies. But you could pay both of them off. They would run the body under the street into the furnace, and nobody would be the wiser. And they ran that racket for a long time. Yeah. Wow. That whole area is just, it's insane. There's a whole like if you ever bring your team up here, we will show you all the little cool spots. The canal that we live by was part of like the Erie Canal. Like it's all part of that. It all goes off of that. When they worked on it, malaria would run rampant through the whole through the whole people. They would die, literally bury their bodies where they were working and continue digging. Like Sherry Brake was telling us that you could walk in any direction. You know, you could either walk towards the Massillon way or the Cleveland way, and probably like every 4 feet, there's a body.
Oh, wow.
So, and you feel it. You feel like it's a lot harder to feel things in an open air environment because the energy can just go kind of all over the place a little bit. But some of the closed air places that we've been have just been like amazing. Is there anybody you want to shout out? Anything you want to plug? If so, please, by all means, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say hi to my team, all the members of SRI and everybody out there in the spooky community. If you get a chance, check out our YouTube channel. It's SRI Huntington WV. That's on YouTube. And if you get a chance, check out my blog at Theresa's Haunted History of the Tri-State. Talk about all the haunted history, ghost stories, UFOs, Bigfoot, cryptids, all that cool stuff in West Virginia and beyond.
It's a very cool blog. I have read it. I read it. I try to keep up on it as best as I can. I've also seen their YouTube channel. So I will put those in the group so that you guys can also see the amazing work that they do and that Theresa does. And before we go, I promised a dad joke. So I and she said her husband would love it. So I'm sure he's gonna. Are you gonna play the music?
Yeah, I got
All right.
Hold on.
Oh, do it.
Here
do
it comes.
It, do it. Do it.
Here it comes. Now I gotta find it because you got me off the spot there.
Yeah, you didn't.
It's time for dad jokes.
That's me singing.
That is him singing. What's a ghost's favorite thing about Thanksgiving dinner?
Don't.
The gravy.
I'm glad the show's over.
I don't know if you could have finished out the show with that joke.
That would have ended it right there. That would have ended it right there.
Well, we want to thank our guest, Theresa Racer, for being on the show. Theresa, you were fantastic. You were always welcome back to come back on the show. We would definitely like to team up with you and your team and check out one of these places. Appreciate you, Zach. Thank you. And we definitely would like to work together on something and maybe even do a collaborative thing that
definitely.
That would be an awesome thing. So we will get with you and then we'll figure out something. Like I said, I would love to see that antique place because I think I was going to say this when we were talking about it, but if I remember you talking about that at some point, like I think you posted a picture of the front of the building at one point, and I was like,
I talked about the Omnic and the little creature a couple of times. I didn't tell that story tonight, so
we'll have to have a part two.
There's going to be a part two. Anyways, guys, hope you all have a great weekend. Next week will be a pre-recorded show. We will not have a live show on Friday. I will not be here. Also, I will be back in Sudden interviewing Andrew Smith. Yes, I'll be back at the world famous Flatwoods Monster Museum interviewing him Thursday, probably around 6. If I get back in time, I might upload that for Friday. So we might have that. Sunday, I will be at the Haunted Heyman interviewing Theresa. It's going to be an enjoyable time. I can't wait. Hopefully I see something. I'm looking forward to going there. So anyways, guys, thank you to our guest. You were awesome, Theresa. It was a pleasure. And we definitely like to have you back at some point.
Well, thank you. I've been a fan of the show for such a long time, and I really appreciate you guys having me on.
Thank you. That means a lot to us. So thank you so much. Well, guys, it's time to end the show. It's time to get up out of here. As always, why be boring when you can be uncanny? We will see you folks in 2 weeks.